Okay, welcome back. This is an original tale-style story about in-laws who think they can do anything they want. They assumed they could demand and control and no one would stop them. That assumption did not last. My mother-in-law demanded that my 9-year-old daughter hand over her very expensive MacBook to her cousin as a gift. She told my child that if she refused, then she should stop calling her grandma. Then my husband finally stood up and said enough. His parents' faces went pale. I knew something was wrong the second my daughter walked through the front door. Grace usually comes home like a small storm. Shoes fly off toward the shoe rack. Her backpack lands wherever it lands. She talks fast about her day with the energy of someone who has never paid a bill. That night Grace stepped inside like she was entering a museum. Quiet. Careful. Her shoulders were raised near her ears like she wanted to disappear inside her hoodie. Michael followed behind her carrying her overnight bag. My husband wore that neutral face he uses when he believes neutral means no one can read him. I have read him for years like a familiar menu. Before I could ask anything, he said they were fine. He said his mom and dad were fine. He said Grace had a good time. Grace said nothing. She did not even look at me. That was not a good time. I waited. Sometimes kids need a moment to switch from one place to another in their head. Sometimes they are tired. Sometimes they are hungry. Sometimes they are planning a quiet rebellion over something silly. But Grace walked past me and went straight down the hallway and closed her bedroom door with a soft click. Not a slam. Not dramatic. Just final. I stood there staring at the door like it might open and explain itself. Michael set the bag down and gave me a small shrug like we were both watching a strange documentary about our own child. He said she was quiet in the car. He said she was probably tired. But tired kids still ask for snacks. Tired Grace still argues with me if I suggest bedtime. This was different. I made dinner. Nothing fancy. Just simple food. The kind of meal you cook when you hope routine will hold the world together. While the pasta boiled, I knocked softly on her door and asked if she was hungry. There was a pause. Then she said not really. That was another sign. Grace usually treats hunger like a small problem that can be solved with crackers and stubbornness. Not really meant something happened. I kept my voice light and told her I would leave a plate if she changed her mind. She paused again, then said okay. I looked over my shoulder at Michael. He was scrolling on his phone like phones contain answers. He glanced up and saw my face and put the phone down. That was rare. We ate at the kitchen table with just the two of us. The third chair stayed empty and it felt wrong in a way I could not explain. Every so often I heard quiet movement from Grace's room like she was pacing or opening drawers. Then silence again. After dinner I washed the dishes fast and hard like I could scrub worry off the plates. Michael offered to dry. I knew why. He wanted to be helpful, but he also wanted to keep moving. If he stayed moving, he did not have to sit with the thing none of us were naming. I dried my hands and walked down the hallway and knocked again. I asked if I could come in. There was a long pause. Then she said yes. I opened the door. Grace sat on her bed with her knees pulled up. She stared at a spot on the carpet like she was trying to solve a hard problem with her eyes. Her cheeks were warm. Her eyelashes looked damp. My heart twisted. I sat on the edge of the bed and kept my body gentle so I would not crowd her. I asked what was going on. She shrugged. Not a rude shrug. A small helpless shrug. She said nothing. I waited. I told her that even nothing can feel big sometimes. She swallowed hard. I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and asked if something happened at Grandma Patricia's house. Her eyes flicked toward mine then away. She said not really. That answer did not fit. I did not push. I did not interrogate. I did not want her to feel trapped. I sat with her in quiet until her breathing slowed again. I offered to read with her or watch something silly. She shook her head. I asked if she wanted me to stay for a minute. After a pause, she gave a tiny nod. So I stayed. I sat on my own child's bed and listened to the quiet like it might confess. After a while, her breathing evened out. I kissed her forehead and told her good night. When I returned to the kitchen, Michael leaned on the counter with his arms crossed staring into space. He asked if she was okay. I told him I did not think so. Michael breathed out slowly like he had been holding it in. He said his mom did not say anything weird. He said his dad did not say anything weird. He said it was normal. Normal can be a disguise. Some families wear normal the way other families wear perfume. I almost said that out loud. Then I stopped because the last thing I wanted was a fight about his parents when my instincts were already shouting. We went to bed. I did not sleep. Sometime after midnight, I heard a sound so small it almost did not register. Tape. That sharp tearing sound that happens when someone is wrapping something. I sat up. My heart jumped. Michael was asleep beside me with one arm over his face like he was blocking out the world. The tape sound came again. Then paper crinkled. I slipped out of bed and walked down the hallway. The house was dim. Only a small night light glowed near the outlet. Grace's door was cracked open. A thin strip of light spilled into the hall. I pushed the door open and stopped. Grace was on the floor surrounded by wrapping paper and a roll of tape and ribbon that looked like it came from a saved gift bag. In front of her was her MacBook. Not the box. The actual laptop. She was wrapping it like it was a birthday present. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like my mind fell behind. I said her name and tried to keep my voice steady. I asked what she was doing. She froze with tape stuck to her fingers. Her eyes snapped up. For a moment she looked stunned. Then her face crumpled. She whispered that she was just. I crouched down and asked why she was wrapping her laptop. Her lips shook. She blinked hard like she was trying to hold tears back by force. She said she was giving it to Lucas. I stared at her. I asked what she meant. She repeated it with a shaking voice. My brain tried to make it make sense and failed. Grace wanted that MacBook more than anything. Not because she wanted to show off. Not because she wanted games. She wanted it because she dreams of making videos. She edits small films like other kids draw pictures. She talks about camera angles and sound effects like a tiny director. That laptop was not a toy to her. It was her dream in metal and glass. I asked if she truly wanted to give it away. Grace nodded and tears finally spilled. She said it was unfair. I asked what was unfair. She wiped her cheeks with her sleeve and said it was unfair that she has it and Lucas does not. She said she did not want to be spoiled. She said she did not want to be bad. My chest tightened. Kids do not invent that kind of guilt on their own. Kids do not suddenly decide they must give away the thing they love most to prove they are good. That guilt had fingerprints. I asked who told her that. Grace shook her head fast like the answer was dangerous. I told her I was not mad. I said I only needed to understand. I asked again who told her she had to do this. For a moment she just cried quietly like her body finally gave up on holding it in. Then she whispered Grandma Patricia. My blood turned cold. She added that Grandpa George was there too like she did not want to leave him out. I asked what Grandma Patricia said. Grace's voice got smaller. She said Grandma Patricia told her it was not okay for her to have something so fancy when Lucas does not. She said a good granddaughter shares. Grace hesitated and squeezed her eyes shut. I asked what else. Grace looked at me with fear and said that if she did not do it then she could not call her grandma anymore. Something hot rose in me. The kind of anger that makes your hands shake. The kind of anger that comes from an adult making a child cry to get what they want. Behind me I heard a creak in the hallway. Michael stood in the doorway, half asleep, hair sticking up, blinking like he woke inside a bad dream. He asked what was going on. Grace looked at him, then down, clutching the wrapping paper like it was a lifeline. I told Michael the truth. I told him his mother told our child she could not call her grandma anymore if she did not give Lucas the laptop. Michael stared like he could not understand. Grace nodded miserably. Michael crossed the room and kneeled in front of Grace. He asked her softly if Grandma really said that. Grace nodded again. Michael's jaw tightened. He looked up at me and I saw something I rarely see when it comes to his parents. Not patience. Not diplomacy. Not the urge to smooth everything over. Something harder. He stood up. Then without a word he pulled out his phone. It was late. The house was dark. Our daughter was crying on the floor in wrapping paper. And my husband, who avoids conflict, was unlocking his phone like he was about to do something bold. I started to say his name. He did not look at me. He said no. Quiet. Final. Grace watched him like he was walking into a storm. I watched him the same way. Michael chose a video call. He did not explain why, but I knew. If you can see a face, people cannot pretend later that you misunderstood. They cannot hide behind tone. They cannot rewrite the moment as easily. I stayed off to the side behind Michael so I could see the screen. Grace sat on her bed, hugging a pillow and watching with wide, frightened eyes. Patricia and George appeared on the screen. The camera angle was off. Patricia leaned forward and blinked like she just remembered the time. She said it was late. George squinted at the screen and lifted a slow, small wave. They did not look sleepy. They looked caught. Michael's voice was controlled and polite. He greeted them. Patricia tried to sound bright and asked if Grace had a good time. Michael did not answer that. He said, we need to ask you something. Patricia's eyebrows lifted. Michael took a breath and said Grace was wrapping her laptop tonight and said she was giving it to Lucas. Patricia made a small chuckle like it was sweet. She called Grace generous. Michael did not smile. He asked if Patricia told Grace she had to do it. Patricia did not deny it. She said yes like it was obvious. Patricia said Michael gave a child a very expensive gift and it was not appropriate. She said Lucas does not have anything like that and it is not fair. George nodded once like the decision was already made. Michael said it was for Grace editing and they know that. Patricia waved a hand and said it is still too much and Lucas wants one. She said Lucas would appreciate it. Grace made a small hurt sound. I squeezed her shoulder. Michael's voice went colder. He asked if Patricia told Grace she cannot call her grandma anymore if she refuses. Patricia smiled, but it was not warm. She said if Grace wants to be part of this family, she must learn to share. Michael said that is not what he asked. Patricia's eyes narrowed. She said if Grace wants to be her granddaughter, then she must behave like one. That is when Michael changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. The part of him that tries to keep everyone comfortable disappeared. Michael pushed his chair back and stood up. Even through the screen he stood tall and still. Patricia blinked. George sat straighter. Michael's voice was quiet but heavy. He said if you want to be Grace's grandparents then you need to behave like it. Patricia tried to speak. Michael cut in with a single word, no. The word landed like a locked door. He said they do not threaten a child's love to get what they want. He said they do not guilt a child into giving up something important. He said they do not use family as a leash. Patricia's face went pale. George's mouth opened then shut. The silence that followed was shock. Michael looked at the screen and said we are done. Then he ended the call. No apology. No softening. No negotiation. He turned to Grace and kneeled in front of her. His voice softened but his message stayed firm. He told her she is not giving her laptop to Lucas. He asked if she understood. Grace's eyes filled and she nodded. Michael held her hands and told her she does not have to give up something she loves to make adults happy. He said that is not love. He said that is not family. Grace whispered that Grandma said. Michael said he does not care what Grandma said. Hearing him say that made my stomach flip in the best way. He told Grace that if Patricia wants to be her grandma, then Patricia will act like one, not the other way around. Grace let out a shaky breath like she had been holding it all night. Michael looked at me and said, "We are not going tomorrow." I knew what he meant. Lucas' birthday. Michael typed a short message and sent it. No debate. No long explanation. He sent it and that was that. We were not going. Later Grace slept. Michael sat at his computer looking tired in a deep way. The tired of someone who has been holding up a wall for years and finally realizes he can put it down. He said he has been paying for them for so long. I sat beside him and said I know. He said he kept telling himself it was temporary. He said they just needed help. He said Kathleen would get on her feet. He said his parents would appreciate it. Then he laughed once. Dry and empty. He said, and then they did this to Grace. He opened his bank app and scrolled through transfers and repeating payments. Then he started canceling them one by one. He canceled the monthly help he sent to his parents. He canceled the money he sent to Kathleen. He canceled the money he paid for Lucas' activities. He removed his card from the phone plan he covered. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he closed the laptop and looked at me and said he was done. He said he was done paying people who hurt his child. I squeezed his hand and told him good. I said me too. That night the house felt quiet. Not tense. Just quiet. The next morning my phone buzzed over and over. Kathleen posted a long emotional message online. The kind that avoids the real event but still paints you as the villain. She claimed Michael threw a tantrum and cut them off right before Lucas' birthday. She claimed we dragged adult problems onto a child and ruined the day. Then she used Grace's name. She said Grace refused to help her cousin and hurt him. I stared at it and thought that if you use a child's name to win then you already lost. Patricia commented that she thought they raised Michael better. George wrote about being abandoned by their own son. Relatives added sad faces and vague sympathy. A few people asked what happened. Kathleen answered with more sadness and no facts. Michael read it over my shoulder and went very still. Then a relative who attended the party called me and quietly told me Lucas had a meltdown. I asked why. She said he expected Grace's laptop. She said he screamed and cried when it did not show up and demanded they buy him one. So the day was not ruined by us. It was ruined by entitlement. Michael sat down at the table and said very quietly that they were saying he never helped. He showed me the post where Kathleen claimed Michael never supported them. That rewrite hit him harder than the insults. Years of help erased in a sentence. Grace walked into the kitchen rubbing her eyes and I flipped my phone over fast so she would not see adults arguing about her like she was an object. Michael watched her walk away and something settled in his face. He said he was replying. He typed slowly. Not messy. Not furious. Finished. He wrote the truth. He wrote that Grace was wrapping her laptop because Patricia and George pressured her. He wrote that Patricia threatened Grace and said she could not call her grandma anymore if she refused. He wrote that Grace cried and felt terrified. Then he wrote the part Kathleen hoped no one would ask about. The money. He listed the support he had been sending for years in a simple, clear way. He ended with one final line. He said he has receipts. He did not post screenshots. He did not need to. That line was a locked door. Then the tone changed. People asked if Patricia threatened a child. People asked if she used grandma as a weapon. People started doing the math out loud. That is always a bad day for liars. Kathleen stopped replying. Patricia and George stopped commenting. For the first time the silence felt like relief. Weeks later the doorbell rang. Michael opened the door and Patricia and George stood on our porch with Kathleen behind them. Patricia held a store cake in a plastic container like it was a peace offering. She smiled and said hello and offered the cake. Michael looked at the cake and then at his mother and asked what she wanted. Patricia said she wants to move forward. She said they understand now. She said they overreacted. She said we should go back to how things were. There it was. Michael said no. Patricia looked shocked. Michael told her they were not here because they were sorry. He told her they were here because the money stopped and the sympathy trick did not work. Patricia tried to deny it. Michael raised a hand and kept going. He said if they want contact with Grace, it will be on his terms. He said no money. None. He said they will apologize. They will behave. He said visits will be supervised. They do not get private access. They do not get to guilt Grace. They do not get to threaten her. He said if he hears one more request for money or one more attempt to manipulate Grace, then they will not see her at all. Patricia stared at him like he was a stranger. George looked stunned. Kathleen's face went red with anger and embarrassment. Patricia said he changed. Michael nodded once and said yes. Patricia offered the cake again like sugar could replace accountability. Michael did not take it. They left. When the door shut, Michael let out a long shaky breath like he had been holding it for years. I hugged him and he hugged me back. And in that quiet I understood something important. Boundaries do not only protect children. They also protect adults who were trained to believe they were not allowed to have any. Months later our life looked different. Not because we moved. Not because we got lucky. Because we stopped paying for other adults' comfort. Without that monthly drain we could breathe. We were not suddenly rich, but we were not always calculating. We took Grace on small trips and simple weekends that felt special because we were not stressed the whole time. Grace seemed lighter, like she was no longer carrying the invisible job of keeping grown-ups happy. Michael changed too. Less tense. Less apologetic. More grounded. Patricia and George tested boundaries a few times. Little pushes. Little tricks. Attempts to slide back into the old normal. Each time Michael held the line. Eventually they adjusted. Now they see Grace on a regular schedule. Always supervised. Always with us present. No private talks. No secret ice cream trips. No whispering guilt in the car. Grace enjoys visits more now because she is not afraid. She knows we are right there. Kathleen and Lucas adjusted too. Without our support, Kathleen had to cut extras. They still had enough for basics. What they lost was the cushion and the upgrades they felt entitled to. It became clear that they did not need Michael to survive. They wanted him to keep their comfort level. Our home is happier now. Grace is secure. Michael is free from being the family bank. And Patricia cannot weaponize the word grandma anymore because that word is not something Grace has to earn by giving things away.